Vasek Pospisil has made an appearance.
We never wanted to file this lawsuit. That was never anything that we wanted to do. I mean, we tried for years to collaborate with the tours.
And you had talked about the lack of transparency in terms of the financials, and how when you were on the council, you had asked multiple times about the financials from the Masters events, and they would promise, and that would never, I think they would never respond to it in the end.
Even to that, like just underarm serves, and then nobody gets any advantage with the serve. Just hardcore.
Ooh.
Just hardcore game.
Vasek would not like that, by the way.
I would not like that. I oppose that idea. It's a bad idea. He's young and he has such an amazing career. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's like, you know, he's
We all are.
yeah, he's amazing charisma, amazing player. And I didn't want this to be a distraction.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the We're Going 5 podcast. We're really lucky today that Vasek Pospisil has made an appearance.
Yes, sir.
So just for everyone, to remind everyone about this man. Vasek, you are a Davis Cup champion in 2022. Wimbledon doubles champion in
First time in history Canada won the Davis
First
Cup, by
time,
the way.
true,
So
true.
this man has
Respect.
made
Yes,
Respect.
big moment.
You are a Wimbledon
moment.
Wimbledon doubles champion in 2014 when you won it with Jack Sock. You took down the Bryant brothers in an epic 5-setter.
Epic.
Olympic semi-finalist, top 25 in singles, top 4 in doubles, and most importantly, the maple syrup king.
Yes.
So welcome, Vasek.
That was the highlight. That was the highlight of the career.
You had us all with
Yeah.
the maple syrup. So welcome, Vasek.
Thank you guys for having me.
It's nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you
Yeah.
for making the time.
I'm excited to be here.
most
Very
importantly-
excited to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Thank you for being on, but most importantly, especially because this episode, he's one of the PTPA founders. So
Yeah.
which is the main reason we're actually talking today.
Yeah. So we'll have a separate conversation about your tennis life and career
And the maple syrup.
and the maple syrup, which we want to get into. But today, maybe if you can help enlighten us on what's going on with the PTPA. And so, Vasek, if you can just start off and tell us, why did you guys create the PTPA? And also, why did you choose to get involved personally in this project?
Yeah, so that's a very, very long story. I guess the reason we started the PTPA is just that in the current structure, in tennis, and this has been an issue obviously for decades now. There's not a clear, there's not a player voice and a proper representation of the players. And that's, reflected in so many different ways, whether it's prize money, whether it's scheduling, even just some very basic asks that the players have that might, be different from what the tournament side want. And it's just very hard to get anything done. And we don't have any leverage in any type of negotiation. We're kind of, bound to this system with no voice. And I think that was really the main reason why this started, and why I personally got involved in it was, going back to when I believe I was maybe 26 years old. There was this wave of player unrest. Everyone was very unhappy with, the prize money, the percentage of revenue that was going back to the athletes. That was kind of the hot topic, but like I said, this funnels down into so many different issues. And at that time, I just really wanted to understand, well, why are tennis players, why do they need to be paid only 14% of revenue? Like what compared to other sports? It just didn't make any sense to me. And obviously we'd always get some kind of, reasoning behind that. But ultimately, it was very clear that it's because we just didn't have a true seat at the table. There's an illusion of one in the current structure, but when you actually understand the mechanics of how things operate, we're very, very, very far from having a true seat at the table. So this is really just an effort to make that happen. And I kind of figured, okay, well, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be me. Like I had this, naive mentality. I mean, at the time, I was like, well, players they're too international, language barriers. Everyone's so focused on their careers. There's so many conflicts of interest. And I just feel like to be able to actually set up a true player association would be like a mountain to climb. And I figured, okay, well, I can be the one to do it if I'm strategic enough, and if I'm go about things the right way, then things have to change, and there has to be that moment for tennis, the same way that the other sports have had their moment. And so when I had back surgery in 2019, I had 9 months of time on my hands, and I figured maybe that's enough time to make it happen. I was a bit also naive and thinking that could do it a little bit quicker than what ended up being reality, but that was, at the end of the day, that was why I got involved. And I'm also a man of principle, and I didn't like what I was seeing. I didn't like feeling like I was being taken advantage of by the system, along with my fellow peers. And then I just felt like it was the right thing to do at that time. And I had time on my hands, like I said, and I want there to be fairness, and I stand up when that's not the case. So that was, kind of a brief overview of why I got involved and the purpose of PTPA's existence.
That's awesome. Actually, it's inspiring because, to take a step like that, to put yourself out there, it's something that not I guess lots of people would like to do, but they never do. So big props to you for doing that. And I guess now it's turned into something. So well done. Well done.
Yeah, thanks.
And
yeah.
I just I wanted to ask Vasek, because you just said like how there's no real seat at the table, but like, because if from the outside looking in, if we look at the governance structure of the ATP, you have the tournaments on one side and you have the players on one side, and it looks like it's a 50-50 balance. And then you have people who are you're supposed to have player representatives in the board, and then you have people from the tournament side. So, but how is the PTPA offering something different? Because from the outside looking in, it looks like actually the players have a seat at the table. So what's the issue? So how are they different?
Yes. Yeah.
From the approach.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked. Yeah. So I'll give you, I guess just being on the council for 5 years, seeing how this structure, works in real time. So I'll give you an example of that, and then I'll explain the differences. I think, yes. So right now from the outside, you said, okay, the tour is owned, it's 50% players. There's 3 board seats that are player representatives, and there's 50% on the tournament side, which, by the way, is not going to work. I mean, you can't have, players and tournaments under one umbrella to begin with. Is just completely illogical. But what happens in reality is if you want to make any changes from either side, you need a majority, or you need at least 4 of those 6 on smaller issues to vote in favor. So that means if the players want something, then it's unlikely the tournaments want that as well, especially if it's an increase in prize money or an increase in whatever, right? So you actually end up needing a tournament representative to vote in favor of the players, and on bigger issues it's actually super majority, so it's 2 from each side. And so it's very rare. So usually we'll end up, if you have good player board members, and very often there's a lot of power on the tournament side that can influence even the player board members. And I have a story on that, how that happened on a situation where we actually kind of got the shorter end of the stick, because one of our board members voted in favor of the tournaments when all of us were like, no way, like we cannot accept this. This is a ridiculous deal. It was a prize money formula, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. I can't remember exactly, but so it's very difficult to actually get anything done. And then at the time, and then the CEO, now they've restructured things a little bit, but the CEO at the time could make a tie-breaking vote, which he would never do, because then he could risk losing his job, because to get reelected, he needs to get board approval. So it's a flawed system in general. And one example is we had there was a data deal, data rights that was up for renewal, and we didn't know about it. The players had no idea that this was happening, and I found out from reading an article, Sports Business Journal, that it was this contract was extended, but it was never taken to the market. It was just kind of like all done behind closed doors. And I was like, wait, what is going on here? So I approached one of our player board representatives, and I said, hey, like, how come we didn't hear about this deal? And I won't mention his name. At the time, he's like, you can't tell anybody that I'm telling you this. So it's like, but he basically said that they were told by the ATP to not talk to the players about this, that it's in the best interest of the ATP that we don't know that this deal's even happening, and just let, they'll do it and whatever. And I obviously reacted pretty, I was very surprised. And I'm like, well, what about your fiduciary duties to the players? Like, you have to tell us these things. And he goes, no. Our fiduciary duties are to the ATP, not to the players. So if anything is, if it's in any way described as in the best interest of the ATP, then they don't even have to listen to the players, and they can obviously justify that however they want. So the whole system is rigged. It really is. And I mean, that's kind of the easiest. That's the best way I can describe it. Having been there for 5 years and not able to make any meaningful change. And they'll give little things, little incremental. Oh, here you go. Here's a couple, just to kind of keep you happy, just the bare minimum to be like, okay, they're trying to do something for the players, and just to prevent some kind of unrest from the player side. That's kind of how they've been operating for so long. And this isn't the first time that players have spoken out, obviously. It's just never been organized. I mean, this is the first time where we actually have a team of professionals, and we now have our own organization that's pushing for this change.
Can you just to clarify, the Players Council, players vote for these representatives, correct?
They do. Yes, they vote for these representatives.
So this said representative said that like they were voted by the players, and said that we work in the ATP's best interest, even though they represent the players.
Yes. Yeah. It just doesn't work. I mean, you look at any corporate structure, I mean, around the world, like this is it just doesn't work. This doesn't exist. I mean, I haven't seen a structure like this anywhere else in the world. In the world of business, it just doesn't work that way. You can't have, employees. I mean, they say we're not employees, right? That's a whole other thing, but yet we are bound to their rules, and we're bound to the only tour that exists. Right. There's a huge gray area there. Are we really independent contractors? Are we dependent contractors? Right. So, but yeah, it's again, I mean, I can give you countless examples over the years, how really backwards the whole structure is. And I would say they've had a good run, and they've been, really taking advantage of the structure they have in place. And the fact that tennis is so fragmented, and the fact that it's so international, and players don't, half the guys don't even speak English or good English, let alone something to understand a contract that they signed at the beginning of the year. And so yeah, I mean, tennis, like I said, every sport has had their moment where there's been some kind of I don't want to use an aggressive term here, but where the players kind of stand up for their rights and are able to make meaningful change. And in every one of those cases, the sport has then thrived. I mean, it's like taking maybe, one step back. In this case, I don't even think there'll be a step back. It really depends on how the ATP, WTA, ITIA, ITF react to this lawsuit. But then if you look forward, if you go back in history and see what these cases have done for the other sports, they really flourish, they thrive. And that's what tennis needs. I mean, tennis is not performing well. I mean, it's an amazing product. I saw a recent tweet, but it's an amazing product. People love tennis. It's the third most watched sport in the world, second most bet on sport in the world. But it's just not performing well. And it's because it's a monopoly, and it's just not being run the right way. And I think, for the players to break free from that structure, I think is extremely important that we become independent and for tennis to be a free market.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Vasek, I mean, we've done our best to research this issue with you as much as possible. We had to look through the 163-page lawsuit. We've polled our fans on TSH Tennis to get their thoughts. So maybe let's try to dig in some of the issues that were highlighted in the lawsuit, and then maybe you can walk us through them or guide us through some of the some of the things here that we can dig into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
Yousef, you maybe want to start off.
Yeah, go ahead, Vasek.
Well, I'll just preface this by saying I'm not a lawyer. so I'm not going to walk through.
But that's the whole thing.
You know,
but that's the whole thing. We want you.
I
want you to tell us.
I wear a lot of hats, but there's some hats I cannot wear, and that is one of them.
No. You've been on the Players Council. You're a player. You were in the locker room. You've seen both sides. Now you're working with the PTPA. So you have many different perspectives to give us, I guess, a holistic view of what's going on. And I think that's what fans want to see, because at the end of the day, we care about fans. We care about the players, and we don't want them to be exploited. So that's what we want to hear. So we want to hear what's going on. So just from your perspective, tell us the entire issue. It's actually quite funny because we were just talking, because we also have a paddle podcast, and I don't know if you've heard, but they had they have issues with their tour at the moment too, and we were talking about, like, there's so much to learn from tennis, and then just a few weeks after that, this happened. So it's funny in a way.
Yeah, I remember we kept on saying they should just do exactly because they're facing similar predicament, kind of a representation and unfairness, and kind of the tour has a lot of power. So I was the one saying they should just copy exactly what tennis is doing. Tennis is working. Tennis is working fine, but little do we know that actually there's way more issues that we don't know about. And it's quite funny that the ATP was created also because of some unfairness and some kind of issues that they had prior to that, and the history of tennis as well, which is apparently it's far from done.
Yeah, no, it is far from done. And if anything, I think things have gotten progressively worse in terms of the structure and the power influence of the governing bodies and the tournaments themselves. So I think this is really it's kind of a pivotal moment for our sport. If I to put it lightly, I think this is something that and I've spoken to so many players, and everyone is I'm not gonna say everyone, but most players are very scared to speak up, even in support, and that's even back from when we launched kind of unofficially, or in 2020 when we first made that announcement that we're starting the Player Association. Everyone was so afraid to be associated with the PTPA, because the ATP sent out this email where it made players feel that if they they even changed bylaws overnight, that if you're if you're a member of the PTPA, you could lose benefits, you could there's just a lot of fear that was spread around that time, and it's obviously affects players to this day because they remember that, and some of that is so it's sorry, I have to be careful with what I'm saying, but it's a tricky time, and it's a tricky environment, and it hasn't been fun. I mean, it's been very stressful, and it comes from a good place. I mean, it's I spent so much time and energy into this, and it's just something that needs to happen. I need to follow through, and we have an incredible team working on this right now.
That's great to hear. So what we understand is I think there are like 5 main issues. So let's go, if we can get into each one as much as we can. But I think the biggest one is the player welfare. And that seems like one of the biggest ones that from our perspective looks like it's really an issue. So can you tell us what are your biggest concerns, like when it comes to the players' welfare in general?
Well, my biggest concern with player welfare is that we have close to zero say in what in that topic in general. I mean, whether it's playing matches at 3 a.m, and then having to,
which is insane.
I mean, the fact is that we don't have the ability to really put our foot down on any of these issues, whether it's the balls, right? The balls, I mean, everyone's complaining about the balls. There was a huge change 3 years ago or so, where all these elbow and wrist issues started coming up. I mean, there's so many guys that are having elbow issues that you don't hear of because, either they're lower ranked or they just don't speak about it openly. I've never seen anything like it, honestly. And so something like this, okay, well, these balls are, I don't know, there's something wrong with them, really. And you know, I mean, I think that's why I had 3 elbow tears the last 2 years, and why there's so many problems. You know, that's been coming up. You know, whether it's also the traveling, you're playing one tournament here, one tournament there. Like, we don't have player input. I'm not saying, you know, that's bad right now, or this is bad right now. We just don't have any input. And so you get burned out. The season is so long. Like, you know, of course, some players would like to have a long season. Others, most players do not want to play January until end of November. You know, it's so tough on the body. It's so tough on the mind. You know, and even I have one particular story where I finished a match. I don't know exactly what time it was. I think it was probably 12:30 a.m. It's a 3.5 hour match. And it was a Paris Bercy, and around 12:30 a.m. I finished. I got to be very, you know, vague with what I'm saying here exactly, but this is the general story. And I finished really late, and then the schedule came out for the next day, and I had to play, you know, early afternoon. It was, I don't know exactly what time it was, but it was the recovery. The time was, it was just not enough time to rest at all. And that, you know, and I could have played later in the day. I could have played 6 p.m. or something to for them to give me more time to rest. And by the time I got to bed, by the time I had treatment, you know, I was in bed at like 4:30 or something, and played the next day and herniated my disc, right? And I just didn't have enough sleep. I slept for like maybe 5 hours or 5.5 or 6 hours, right? I mean, this is player welfare. This is like something that is, for me, is just not acceptable, right? So this is just a small story that was actually,
why does that keep happening? Why does it keep happening, Vasek? The story about finishing late and then playing early, it's happening to everyone. Even Zverev, remember in Acapulco a couple of years ago?
Everyone, like that exact story. I think it happened to Yannick Sinner, but he actually decided not to play. I think in Paris Bercy, I think a few years ago.
Yes,
he had like that same exact issue where he finished so late and he decided not to play. So, but some people, I guess, some people decide to play, and then this is the result. So, what is this?
Yeah, well, this just, you know, they're just only prioritizing the event and getting the matches done, and, you know, TVs and ticket sales and you know, everything really tends to come first, or tends to come in front of the player welfare and health, right? I mean, there's, you know, oh, if somebody gets injured, there's another one, a lucky loser, bring them in or whatever, right? So, that's you know, really at the core of the issue here is that the players just, you know, from what I've seen, they just come last in pretty much everything. I mean, I can't think of anything where players would be a priority in this current structure. So that's something that has to change.
Can it be remedied, Vasek, with, given how, you know, the TV rights works and you know, the media and so forth? Is that something that can be remedied?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you know, at the conclusion of this lawsuit and this, you know, the back and forth that we hopefully have with the tours and everyone involved, yeah, I mean, ideally you have to, yes, it can. I think you have to sit down and make compromises and come to, on both sides, and come to an agreement that makes sense for everybody, that the players are happy with, the tournaments are happy with. Like in any, I mean, right now, the main thing is we need to be seen as business partners. And, you know, in any business, if you have two sides, and it is two sides, it's tournament organizers and owners and players. There's two distinct, you know, opposite sides in one business, but we're business partners in the business of tennis. And, you need to sit down and have these negotiations and come to agreements that work for everybody. And that's, I mean, there's no reason why that can't happen in tennis. So for sure it can be remedied, and for sure that we can come to some kind of structure, even with TV rights or scheduling or whatever it is that makes sense. And then everybody, you know, then you adapt. But it can't work for, you know, it can't be a situation where it only works for one side and to the detriment of the other, especially if we're such a crucial part of this, of the business. I mean, you know, I think, you know, I think it goes without saying that the players and the talent is a crucial, you know, probably the most important part of the business. So, So
you're the
yeah,
core. You're the core
it's
for
the
sure.
core of it, right? So I think it's just time that tennis has had its moment where, like I said, I mean, I keep referencing the other sports, and I think I'm right to do so. I think we're in 2025, and this should have happened decades ago, but we're here today, and it's an uncomfortable thing that we have to go through, but it's necessary.
Okay, well, Vasek, you hinted at, okay, so how can we remedy this thing? And it can be remedied. So I have a question. So recently we've seen Masters events, many more than previously, they've gone to the 2-week schedule approach. And does that have a positive and negative impact? Like, because if you stretch it out, or is that, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the 2-week Masters events?
Well, I think so on the 2-week event, I think that most players that I've spoken to, I would say, I'm going to say everybody that I've spoken to, because that's true. Everyone that I've spoken to does not like the 2-week Masters event, because you lose the first round, you're sticking around for a very long time, or even if you're going until quarters, semis, or whatever, it's the whole event is extended, and it's not more rest, right? They like to say, oh, you have a day off. You're not resting on that day off. You're like in a mental, it's draining, very draining mentally. So it actually, and I'm not saying that because I think that players wouldn't be in favor of it if they saw some benefit to that, right? So I think the big thing is they're not really seeing that affect anything positively for themselves, whether it's their bank account, whether it's more rest, whether it is less tournaments. From the feedback that I'm getting, and this is not me saying this because I haven't played these events recently because of my ranking has dropped and I haven't been on tour for a while, but I feel like there could be a scenario where it could work if the players felt like, okay, this is actually worth it. But right now it's not structured in a way where it is. And that's that's common feedback that I've been given, and I know right now they have the profit share formula which it guarantees players 2% increase per year in prize money, which is less than inflation. And they like to talk about how much prize money has gone up over the last 5 years, but they only use the data from 2020 when they dropped prize money by 70%, and not the data from 2019 where even some events are paid more in 2019 than they do today, or in 2024. Wow. So I think I would just say it could make sense if it was more transparent, if there was, let's say, a rev share model, not profit share, where you could easily manipulate the data, which, when you read the fine print, it's very, very easy to do, extremely easy, especially when you can expense infrastructure and you actually need to build a lot of infrastructure to make these events happen. And then, so it's a very complicated matter. And I think right now players are not seeing the benefit of that. And that's the common feedback that I've been getting from these top guys or that are playing these events.
Yeah. Well, for what's the solution for this long season, Vasek? Is the goal here to have like a 8-month season or like a 9-month season, or like what's the vision on how to deal with the longer season and the longer tournament? Like, what would you guys like to see?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not the best person to answer this question. I think this is where you collect the data from the players. How much do they want to play? One, you got to start paying them more. I mean, you have to. This is a multi-billion-dollar business, and there's 100 players that are making a living on the men's and women's side. I mean, and even the ones that are top 100, or they're cutting costs to profit. They don't have a full-time physio, or some guys are even sharing coaches. So I think, one, if you start paying the players what they deserve, then you can shorten the season, because they don't want to be playing all year. And I think what that then looks like is not for me to I could give you my opinion. Yeah. But it's not worth a lot, because it's just one person, right? That gives their opinion. But I can tell you that everyone wants a shorter season. I mean, you're looking at the other sports, they have 2, 3, 4 month off seasons. And I think every player is very jealous of that because, like I said, nobody wants to be traveling all year away from their friends, away from their families, flying 35 weeks of the year to different countries, different time zones. So I think it hurts. It dilutes the product. It hurts the product. Fans can't follow the sport properly. They don't even know when their favorite player is playing and what time zone, and it's not centralized. And I mean, I hear this for nonstop, right? So I think that's hurting the sport. So I think if you can kind of concentrate the season and make it, and elevate it, then I think that will be better for everybody, the players, the fans, and the tournaments. So what exactly that would look like, I think that's where, when we start sitting across from the table and start exchanging ideas, and I think that's where you can create something great.
Yeah, very good. Also regarding sponsorships, Vasek, so you guys have noted that there are many players who are forced to give up name, image, and likeness rights to play. Can you explain this?
Yeah, I would. So I'll explain it in a just generally. I'm not going to get into the details on this, but basically at the beginning of the year, we sign a document that in order to even play our first event of the year, we have to sign to the rule book of the ATP, and you're signing, a lot of things away, including name, image, likeness rights. So I think this is also kind of at one of the core issues of the lawsuit. But that's, and that obviously limits player opportunities, both sponsorship. I mean, sponsorship opportunities. So I think this is one thing as well that's covered in the lawsuit.
On how, or can you explain how does it limit sponsorship opportunities?
Well, because we're giving our name, image, likeness to the tours, so we can then no longer use in certain ways, so.
Maybe if you have a specific example for yourself, Vasek, where you had to give up, for example, a sponsorship opportunity.
Yeah. Well, for example, I'll give like one thing, for example, I could say on that is, we're not allowed to have any sponsorship deals with the betting sites or alcoholic beverages. I'm not saying that would be something that some players wouldn't want that in general. Some might want to do it, but there are certain rules and restrictions that we signed to at the beginning of the year that we're just not allowed to based on what the rule book says. So that is in some ways like, that is control of your own brand, of your own opportunities. So like why are the tournaments able to have betting sponsors, these betting companies sponsoring the events or the tour, but the players are not, right? And that's just a rule that they decided that should be there, but why does it have to be there, right? I think that's kind of something that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Another core issue to the lawsuit is this idea of the ranking system and how the ranking points are really central to the argument you're making throughout. So can you explain this to the fans and how this is locking players up essentially?
Well, it's locking players up because there's one ranking system that, that basically the ATP controls, and all your opportunities, your playing opportunities are bound to this system. So if you're not playing, the ATP events, or if you're not ranked high, you don't get to play Wimbledon, or you don't get to play Indian Wells. So in some way you're completely, you're shackled into that one. It's the ranking system is the most powerful thing in the sport, which ensures that players are playing all the ATP events and really have no choice, because if you don't play, then you can't do anything else. And so that's kind of one of the main, big issue there.
Okay, well, the fourth thing we wanted to talk about, which was also an integral part of this entire situation, was the prize money structure, Vasek. So we know, and by the way, just a quick side note, I wrote a paper about the ATP sports governance structure in my master's degree.
Nice.
And you were actually cited in it. And it would have been nice if we would have had this conversation before I wrote that paper. That was many years ago.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I actually went back to this paper to see what I wrote to get my thoughts again. And you had talked about the lack of transparency in terms of the financials, and how when you were on the council, you had asked multiple times about the financials from the Masters events, and they would promise, and they would never respond to it in the end.
Right.
So can you just give us some insight on this lack of transparency from that perspective? It's
yes.
in regards to financials.
Yeah, for sure. And that's was a big issue for me when being on the council, and a big issue today is that, we don't have this transparency. We don't have audited financials. I mean, we have some financials that are public on the Grand Slam side. But really within the ATP, we don't, these aren't readily available. So it's hard to make an argument, if from either side, we're getting paid what we deserve if you don't have any visibility into these financials. So that's just step one. I mean, for me, again, it's not about, okay, I do think that prize money should be tied to gross revenue. Absolutely. No question about it. There shouldn't be some formula, some creative way to work around that needs to, and whether that's, 20%, 25, 40, 50%, whatever that is, then can be decided by, both sides, and they can, tournaments can make their arguments as to why it needs to be X amount, and players can review that and say, okay, and make their arguments why it should be X amount. And, but currently, we do not have that opportunity. And I think that is ultimately one of the big goals, of this lawsuit, that the outcome that we would like to have is to have full transparency and visibility into these numbers, come to a prize money formula that makes sense. It's tied to gross revenue, and that's it. If it's fair, when it's fair, it's fair. And I'm not going to be the guy to say, oh, I want this, or I just want fairness, right? So I just want players to be getting their fair share. And the only way to really understand what that will look like is to have a true seat at the table. Like I said, for there to be an independent player voice, that doesn't have all these different conflicts of interest, agencies that own tournaments, that represent players, and so that is the dream, right? That is the dream, and that is why, that is one of the big, probably one of the most important things, along with player welfare. Obviously, they go hand in hand, but that we're trying to accomplish here.
Is there a specific number in mind in terms of revenue distribution percentage?
No, I do not have. No, I don't have a number in mind, and I'm not the guy to tell you what that number is. I mean, yeah, I can look at the other sports and I can say, oh, it should be 50%, and maybe our lawyers, our lawyers and our accountants will end up giving us that number, what they think is right. I could jump to conclusions now, or I could guess what I think is right, but for me, that's completely irrelevant. It's the process that's important. It's the process that's important. It's the transparency that's important. If you do business with somebody, you have to trust them, so there's that's the backbone of any successful partnership, whether it's a relationship, whether it's business, whether it's whatever it is. There needs to be trust and due process. And that is like, personally, my biggest fight is okay, like, let's get to that point. So I refuse to put a number on that. I refuse to put a percentage, because for me, that's the outcome, and that's not that's not what's most important to me right now. Right? Like I said, what's most important is fairness. And if it's 35%, then it's 35%. If it's 55%, then great, it's 55%. But I'm not the one that's gonna. I don't even have enough information. I don't have enough information to be able to tell you what that number will be. But that is the type of the formula, and that's the type of approach that we need. It needs to be gross revenue, and not, like I said, and not some creative formula that avoids any type of discussion around a gross revenue share model.
Well said.
Fair enough. You guys also mentioned in the lawsuit the important issue of the ITIA and how they deal with players, and there's stories of searches of personal belongings, phones being confiscated, repeated drug testing, blood tests.
Yeah.
Also interrogations. So, I mean, can you talk to us a little bit about what are the types of reforms that you guys are looking to see here?
Yeah, I can. I can tell you that I haven't had any crazy situations with the ITIA over the years, other than the actual testing methods themselves, which are abusive. I think. I mean, if they show up at 5 a.m. in your place and you gave them an 8 a.m. time slot, you have to answer the door. You can be with your girlfriend. You can be and if you don't, then they can but I've heard crazy stories, and I've talked to a lot of players the last 6 months, because a lot of them are reaching out to me directly, and then or to our PTPA staff, and we've been trying to help a lot of these players, and some of these stories are disturbing, to tell you the truth. Just the process itself is, in my opinion, quite abusive. So there needs to be reform. And I mean, a lot of these things I've heard, I was initially, before we engaged with the lawyers, I'm like, this can't be legal. I was like, how is this not a like human rights violation, right? They just show up and they say, we're taking your phone away. You're like, wait a minute, why? You have to give us your phone, or you're getting a ban, or you're admitting to guilt and you're getting a ban. It's like, and so I don't really understand human rights law well enough to be able to say on the spot, well, that's illegal. But I could tell, okay, this is wrong. This is for sure not right. And so after review, obviously the lawyers have concluded that it's illegal, and that's a big part of our case. And it's really tough. I mean, I don't want to speak for some of this, to speak too much about some of these stories that I've heard, even though they are referenced in the lawsuit. But yeah, I mean, I have a friend of mine that reached out to me, was under suspicion for match fixing, and they took his phone away, and there was no evidence of it. He was, I don't even know if he was playing that day. They found nothing, and he was completely innocent. And then they decided to try to get him on something else. And so they tried to look at evidence for intent to use a banned substance, which he never used, obviously, according to him, but also according to the evidence. They didn't find any evidence that he used anything, but they just found, I guess, some messages that he had some intent or something, or he was researching or whatever. And basically just, yeah, I mean, he's gone through the ringer for years now, and to the point where he just wants to retire, or maybe he's retired now. And
wow. But
it's just not, I mean, if you compare it to the other sports, you need to be treated like a person, right? Like, I mean, you have to have some, yeah. And not like a criminal off of, just from the very first moment, right? So there needs to be reform in the doping system for sure as well. I mean, we've seen so many issues pop up over the last 6 months that are unacceptable. And so, that's another, it's also a big one. There's a lot of things in this 162 page filing, but that's and a lot of big ones, and that's one as well.
Yeah.
But lots of things that clearly need to be remedied, because what you're saying is really just shocking.
For sure. And I think, again, like, the idea here really is that, what we want first and foremost is change moving forward, right? We want, this all needs to change, and this needs to be a thing in the past. And it's not that we're coming here and we want to destroy anything. That's not at all what we're trying to do. We're trying to fix the system that is very broken right now. And there's no reason why this can't happen tomorrow. I mean, if they, if the defendants, have, if they call us tomorrow and say, okay, you know what, we'll talk with you. We don't need to go through all this. We don't need to go through 5 years of back and forth with lawyers. And if they just, but if they want to just kind of come to some kind of solution, then that can happen tomorrow. It doesn't need to take a long time. So I think it's really
clear that these are you're right. These are issues that could be solved. I think once you guys sit at the table and probably easily reachable.
Well, exactly, and it's not okay to break the law, right? It's that's the thing. It's like it's not okay to operate a business this way. If you're breaking the law, you're breaking the law. And it doesn't matter if it's one player that complains about it and takes you to court, or if it's 1,000 players. If you're not operating lawfully, then that needs to stop, right? So the judge will, we're very confident the judge will see the evidence and conclude that they are indeed breaking the law in many ways, more ways than one, as you can see. And then reform is around the corner, and then the sport will just thrive, and tennis will be, much better off for everyone than it is today. Like I said, incredible sport, some of the best sports in the world. So
the best sport in the world.
The best sport in the world. Agreed.
Then,
well said.
Vasek, I wanted to ask a question. Would you probably have a very reasonable answer for that, but maybe to the outside person, why were only 12 people mentioned in the lawsuit? Like, why were only those? Why were there's a lack of kind of it seems like there's a lack of unity with the players together, like they're not united. Why were there only 12 people in the lawsuit?
No, it's definitely not lack of unity. Because we spoke to about 300 players before filing, and I personally called close to 200 players and spoke to 200 players just myself.
Wow.
And not a single person that I spoke to was even hesitant, to be honest with you. Like there was, if anything, there were guys that were like saying, why didn't you do this sooner? Right. So that for me, that gave me so much, reassurance as well, even though I expected that. And I knew that was the case because I've been talking to these guys for 5 years. I think why there's 12 listed plaintiffs at this time is for a few reasons. One, it's a class action, so you don't need to go and have 1,000 players, every player sign onto this, right? It's a class action, so you need a handful of players. And I think the other thing is, why aren't there more top ranked guys? Well, also we have to cover different demographics. So we have to cover doubles, have to cover men, women of lower ranked, higher ranked. And then the other thing is that players are scared. I'm telling you, they're scared, and some don't want to just stick their necks. They don't want to stick their necks out, right? They don't want to, and then potentially face repercussions and retaliation. And they are afraid of that. I can tell you, they are very afraid of that, and for good reason. And because of just how the tours have been operating the last few decades, especially the last, ever since we launched the PTPA, it obviously intensified. There's no question about that. So players are even more scared to be associated with anything we're doing, even if they're quietly very supportive of it, which I can tell you very confidently that the vast majority of players, because is behind this. So, and I say that without a doubt. And obviously it would be nice if they were a bit more vocal, but I totally understand why they're reluctant to do so, to support publicly. So, but like I said, again, even just to elaborate a little further on my previous comments, it's if you're operating illegally, if you're price fixing, if you've created a monopoly, if you're colluding, this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I would do this alone. I would do this alone out of principle. I would do this. I would say, okay. And if you're doing everything fine, if everything is above board, then okay, then the judge throws it out and say, oh, okay, I was mistaken or whatever. But that's not the case, obviously. And you just cannot operate a business illegally. And that is the number one most important point that I will make about this whole thing.
Just one thing I wanted to say also, because I think some further clarification. But one of the interviews, like when you and Ahmed Nassar also went on Andy Roddick's podcast, Surf Podcast, when he was asked about you need a lot of members to be a part of it. Like you need to represent a lot of people. Everybody needs to agree. He mentioned something else in the US where people are represented in a certain case, but they don't need to really sign up. Okay, defend me now. They're like you're saying, if it's illegal, then you only need 12 people, I guess, or how you could do it alone. So I guess the thing of, because when people are like Alcaraz was asked and other players, like, did you know about this? Were you consulted? And they said they weren't. But I guess to your point, they didn't need to know. And essentially, they're just being, you're
or did they know, Vasek? Did you talk to Jack Draper, Alcaraz, Viatek, or who all they came out and basically said they weren't consulted on this?
Yeah, so I spoke to Alcaraz after I actually hadn't spoken to him before, and it was funny in hindsight. I was like, should I talk to him? And the honest truth as to why I didn't was he's young and he has such an amazing career. And I'm a big fan of his. I think he's like, he's
we all are.
Yeah, he's amazing charisma, amazing player. And I didn't want this to be a distraction. But in hindsight, I should have informed him for sure. And so we exchanged texts and they're very friendly. And he was like, yeah, I would love to learn more. After he made the comments that he hadn't heard about it. So yes, that is correct. But there are many, many others, the majority, that of the top players that I have spoken to. And, and even if some of them potentially come out and are more neutral and say positive things or some, I know their stance, and, but I know why also some players may want to stay neutral, like for reasons I described earlier, is there's, they don't want to single themselves out. There's, and also it's complicated matter, right? It's a complicated matter, and it's, I can see why they just want to sit on the sidelines and wait for things to unfold. But the support is there.
Okay.
I wish I could show you. I wish I could show you the text messages and the voice notes that I sent to these players, but if we go to Discovery, I'll have it in Discovery. So
later.
Which is actually, so it's nice because if we go to the beginning of the podcast where you talked about how when you first started the PTPA and you had people on the fence and then people didn't know and they were afraid, and then it looks like more people are becoming more encouraged to and the tide has shifted, I guess, towards I think it's about time. So that's that. Yeah. We in this conversation we've seen the evolution of how things have changed, I guess, over the past few years, and which brings us to the point. So the tide is turning, as we can see, and as you're saying, with all the players, and you have the support from whether it's all, I guess, everyone, different players from all different backgrounds, singles, doubles, mixed, everything. Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? Just with regards to just the direction of the lawsuit, or the sport itself, or just high level? Yeah.
I guess. Where do you see things going from here in general, like in your point of view?
Well, I think pretty simple. I mean, I think everything should just operate as usual, and then in the background we start having discussions with the defendants and co-conspirators and whoever's, everyone named in the lawsuit, and come to and negotiate with them and come to an agreement that makes sense for everyone going forward. And there's no reason that the sport should take any hit in the meantime. But it really, this is where you have to take your egos have to go out of the room. And that's easier said than done, from what I've seen. But there's no reason for there to be any, dramatic process. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way at all. It doesn't have to be that way at all. You can look at the case and say, okay, we're in trouble here. We have not been operating the way we should have. We've gotten away with it for a long time. Let's fix things going forward. This is the time that tennis evolves past the dark ages, and that's it, right? So that, I mean, that would be how I would like to see things happen, and that's, we never wanted to file this lawsuit. That was never anything that we wanted to do. I mean, we tried for years to collaborate with the tours, and to be integrated into the system, for players to have true independent voice, to see the changes happen that we needed to see happen. But we were met with resistance and a lack of action on the opposing side, and unfortunately our hands were tied. We had to do it. There was no other way. So to fix the sport, I mean, that's what we're trying to do from day one. And so the way I see it, go from here is, hopefully relatively cordial conversations, and address all of these issues and come to an agreement without any, collateral damage along the way. Again, that's really just going to depend on their reaction and how they want to go about it. It's really up to them. The ball's in their court. So, I think they're responsible now for how they react. Right. I think that's,
I feel like I'm thinking out loud with you right now, but when I come to think of like other instances where there were players, and I guess whether it's leagues, and you would see the NBA, there's a lockout, the NFL, there's a lockout with, we were talking about paddle in the beginning of the podcast, how they decided to boycott the P2s, which are essentially like ATP 250s. Do you think it could reach a point where, okay, maybe we need to take a stance as big as that to get what we want, or is that something that's no way on the table for that? That's not even a thought.
That's not a thought at this moment. It's I think that this lawsuit we'll get to where we need to go without having to do anything drastic. We honestly haven't even discussed that. We don't think that's anything that's going to be necessary, or whether that's even a path forward, also has not been discussed. We're very confident that the action that we've taken this past week will ultimately achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve for everyone. So, again, I don't think that hasn't been a topic of discussion at all internally, as even something we're considering, because like I said, we're just very confident we won't ever need to, get to that kind of, dramatic point, and whether that's even something we can do, I don't even know the answer to that. So, but of course,
it just feels like sometimes, like when I see these things, they finally understand how important the players are. Like, because we can do this, we can do that, we can exploit X, Y, Z. But when you don't have the players out there, then you have nothing. And from a fan perspective, at least, like without players, like all these tours are nothing, all these leagues are nothing. So give the players what they want. What they rightly deserve. Not what they want, what they rightly deserve.
Exactly. And I think this filing, I think this accomplishes that and more. I think this is the most effective way for us at this point to make these major changes in the sport that needs to happen. So, but ask me in 6 months, I don't know what's going to happen in 6 months or 1 year, but
knock on wood.
That would be perfect, because I mean, it's a perfect lead up to this question, Vasek, which is, we have a lot of fans also who are sharing the same thoughts, which, all right, what does success look like for you, like in a year's time or whatever X amount of time from this, What does a successful tour look like, or what does success look like, as you said, in 6 months plus, whatever it may be? Can you paint a picture for us?
Success would be revenue share model tied to gross revenue, player association, independent from the tours or events, or and player welfare being addressed, throughout that process. And those are the main things. I mean, I think players need to be independent. There needs to be a free market. The sport needs to grow organically and not be constrained by one organization that it's either doing a poor job or a good job of growing the sport. I'm not going to make the argument, even though I think it goes without saying which direction I think that's been going. So yeah, free market, player independence, prize money, tied to gross revenue. Those three. If you have those three, then it fixes a lot.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And yeah. Should I ask one more question about the tournaments? Because there is a point made in the lawsuit. I mean, last point, Vasek, out of my own curiosity here, which is there's a point made about you want more competition between tournaments. I mean, we addressed it tangentially. Is the idea that you want an endless supply of tournaments? Are we going to go away from the fixed structure of the current tournaments we have? Kind of what's the vision behind that? Are we going to see, like, with Wimbledon, we're going to see like a rival tournament, or like with Madrid, and instead of having the Madrid Open and then the Rome Open, are they both going to be at the same time, and should they be competing for players? Like, what's just the comment on that, or thought about what that would look like for those also fans that are wondering, is this going to disrupt the history of the sport or something like that?
No, it won't disrupt the history of the sport. Definitely not. Again, that's not the goal. I mean, that's not anything that we want, right? So we're not going to be making any demands for, a potential loss in history of the Grand Slams. I mean, Grand Slams are the pillar of the sport. I mean, I think the schedule, will there be a Madrid, or that's all stuff that will be resolved throughout the settlement process. Not anything that right now is we have our sights set on. Like I said, the main goals are what I described, and it's just time for some accountability. And again, it can be as simple as sitting at the table. What does that accountability look like? What does the settlement look like? What does a fair system going forward look like? Whether that means major changes from the fans' perspective, I think it will long term. I think long term, tennis will be run much differently. I do think that the schedule needs to be shortened. I don't think you can have an unlimited amount of tournaments. It just doesn't work like that. You're diluting the product, and I mean, that's just the philosophy of how you think that the tour should be run, which I don't even want to get into. For me, again, it's accountability, structure, governance reform, and free market, and then if the players are happy and the tournaments are happy, you have signed contracts, you keep things going. Tennis is not going anywhere. That's for sure. And we're here to make sure that it just gets better, and that the problems that are currently exist get fixed.
Fair enough.
Well, I think we covered everything.
Okay.
Most of the stuff we want to talk about here, Vasek. So yeah, thanks for doing that. But it's our turn now. Well, since we have you here, we thought we'd pitch you our ideas for improvements in the tennis tour.
Yes.
So
love
you
it.
can take them to the ATP. All right.
We love it.
From our fan perspective, we have some really some strong ideas we believe in, Vasek, and we're counting on you to get our voices out there.
Yeah,
We'd love to hear them. We'd love to hear them all. Honestly.
All right. So we have 3 ideas now, and we have much more, but we've decided to finalize on 3 that we'll pitch for you today. These are the ones we want you to focus on when you go back to the ATP.
Sounds
good. I don't know if they'll listen to me, but
well, you're the only one we can count on.
We're the only one
make it
please
make it happen.
Please make it count. All right. So we're gonna give you 3. All right. So the first one here for you, Vasek. Okay. We need to make the finals of Masters tournaments best of 5 sets again, and not just best of 3. Can we do that?
Will you make it happen for us?
Wow. Those were some good times. I really enjoyed those best of 5 matches for the finals. It depends on the schedule. Iconic. It depends on the schedule. I mean, if you know.
Were you a fan of it though, as a player, or is it like from a fan it's cool, but from a player's perspective?
Yeah, well, I've never played a Masters final, so yeah.
I know, but like the idea.
I was close, but no. The idea.
You were close.
No,
yet. You never know, man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think they're cool. I think honestly, yeah, like for the finals, I remember watching Roger and Rafa play finals of Masters 5-setters, for sure. But then you gotta address the schedule, because then that's a 5-setter. If you gotta play the next day, another tournament.
But
they're more fun from the fans' perspective. It depends. You gotta give the fans what they want, right? You gotta give the fans what they want.
You have to understand. At the moment, we do not care about anything else. We only care about what we want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that an agree? You're gonna work on that.
I'll work on it. I'll draft out a plan.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. That's one. Second one, Vasek, and this is to address the contrasting styles in the sport. You know, especially for a lot of the older fans, we need one tournament a year where you have to serve and volley.
Oh, I love that.
That's it.
I love that.
You don't get to do anything. You cannot just sit on the baseline.
I'll come out of retirement for that if that ever happens.
Well, you can work on it. You can make it happen. Add it somewhere in the fine print.
It does not even need to be on grass. I mean, sure, put it on grass. Hey, make it on clay.
I think it has to be on grass. It has to be on.
It has to be on grass. Fine, man.
Has to be.
I'm open. I'm open to it.
Yeah,
Let's see it anyway.
I love that.
Let's get more serve and volleying.
I love that. That'd be pretty cool. Actually, now that you all jokes aside, it'd be kind of an interesting tournament.
I think it would be pretty interesting.
You have to serve volley. You're signing up for this tournament. And then who's the best serve and volleyer on tour?
Yeah, but there are people who are great serve and volleyers who don't serve and volley because they're better at the baseline.
Let's make it from round 128, and then you just have everyone going at it.
Yeah, just beast.
I love it.
I have a counter even to that. Like, just underarm serves, and then nobody gets any advantage with the serve. Just hardcore.
Ooh.
Just hardcore game.
Vasek would not like that, by the way.
I would not like that. I oppose that idea. It's a bad idea.
All right, so we're counting on you for the serve and volley.
Don't work on that.
Yeah, no, I'm not working on that one.
We need the serve and volley, Vasek. We need to get this in the game.
I like that one.
Bring back the serve and volley.
It could be a separate event, huh?
Yeah.
It'd be cool.
How about this? Add another tournament, Vasek, to the already very light schedule.
Yeah, super. It's so crazy because we cover the sport, and it's tiring for us. I can't even imagine what it's like to play. Moving from changing the time zones, just waking up in my same bed is tough. Imagine having to go from place to place. It's crazy.
It's brutal. Yeah, it's brutal. Yeah. It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
All right. Well,
and we don't get to sightsee. We don't get to sightsee, contrary to popular belief. Very rarely.
That sucks.
Not that I would want to that much. I'm so tired. You just want to get to the next place, but
which is a downside, because you probably do, but your mindset is in a different place.
Exactly.
You can't even think of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, last one for you. You promised you're going to do 2 of the first 3 we provided. Now for the last one. Players get 1 point a set where they get to rewind and replay the point.
Ooh.
So once.
So
1 point.
One redo of the point. One redo.
Yeah, exactly. I used to, on Madden, when we would play, and then someone would throw a Hail Mary, a 90-yard touchdown, I'd rewind that thing as fast as I could, and we go again. So if on break point, you break me or something, or you ace me, well, guess what? Rewind, and then you get one a set.
Interesting.
Not more than one.
That would be a fan favorite.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting.
You don't know when it's coming. coming.
That would change history.
On match point.
That would be crazy. That would be crazy.
That would be crazy. That Roger had in Wimbledon against Novak. He gets to replay
There's
that
so many points.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be so
true.
Cool.
The key is to save. The key is you'd have to be very strategic when to use it.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it's
imagine you wait so long and then you don't use it, and then you go back,
and you're down 40 love, triple match point, and you're like, damn.
Then the press conferences, you get asked, hey man, why didn't you use your redo? So can we get to working on that one? Yes or no?
I'll work on that one. No guarantees.
Okay, I mean, this
No
is great.
guarantees. That'd be cool.
So from now until our next meeting, you're gonna work on all 3 of our ideas. So that's
awesome.
fantastic.
I'll give you guys a full update next time.
Which one do you like the most, though?
I like the tournament on grass.
Ooh.
Serve
I
and
like
volley.
the serve and volley. Sorry, the tournament, the serve and volley only first, second serve. That would be pretty interesting. That would be really interesting.
We can make it tougher. When you go deeper in the tournament, then we remove the second serve.
Yeah.
Could do. Also, I think John McEnroe can come out of retirement and probably win.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Well, that
Awesome.
was fun. Thanks Vasek for listening to our ideas. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
All the luck with this responsibility you're carrying on your shoulders, trying to make tennis better.
It's an honorable one.
We're hoping.
Thank you guys.
For
I really
much
appreciate that.
Tour.
It's been exhausting.
Yeah, we can.
I'm exhausted.
We can imagine.
Yeah, we can feel it, and we felt like we had to kind of ask you all these questions, but it's like, it's not so fun sometimes because we're feeling like we're grilling you a bit.
No, it was a lot of fun.
Exact thing. Yeah.
No, it was a lot of fun. It's been a long week, but I'm glad I could I can talk to you guys and make it on your podcast. It's been great.
It's an honor to have you.
Yeah.
It was awesome having you, and you promised we're gonna come back and talk about the tennis, though.
Yes.
We have to do it.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm in.
Yeah.
And
We need to honor you on your way as you hang your racket. We need to honor. By the way, how are you? Are you healthy? Are you going through anything?
No, I'm healthy
you
now.
good?
Yeah, I'm healthy now. I'm healthy now. Just spending time on other things, I guess, and getting back into training, and getting my body right, and then see how the rest of the year goes, and make a decision pretty soon here on what to do with my career.
Good luck.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
Nice.
We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, guys.
You seem like a stand-up guy, and you've officially we've become 3 fans of you on tour.
We were already
Nice.
fans
Come back.
before, but we're now bigger fans.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice.
You're gonna see us on in your comment section. We're gonna keep spamming you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
That's the deal we have. We become just official spammers of the players.
That's awesome. Well, you
And
can
if there's
counter
any
the
hate, send them
mail.
our way. Send them
Yeah.
our way.
If you send me positive messages, that'll be good, because I got a lot of some negative ones these days.
And send us some usernames. We have some cyber bullies that can get to work.
There we go.
Behind the scenes.
Cool.
Yeah. This is nice.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Vasek.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Looking forward to our next chat, hopefully, where we talk more about fun stuff.
Likewise. See you guys. Thanks again.
We'll keep you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, guys. That wraps up our show. Some interesting insights. Let us know what you think in the comments. And follow us so you can get your weekly updates on everything happening in the tennis world.
We'll be talking about Miami next. Crazy stuff going on in Miami.
Have a good night. Good night. Good night. Very good night.